Hello, this is NG36B. Wanted to give some of my thoughts on Action Plan 15, talking about how we already own IT products, and really, instead of trying to focus on making a new data warehouse, perhaps we need to focus on integration strategy. And I definitely agree. There's two pieces when I typed up the plan that there's been some questions on. One of them is about MoEs, which I'll get to in a second, and the other one is about trying to tag the data and what are we going to do? How are we going to break down like language, semantic barriers, all that kind of stuff. So first, to answer MoEs and kind of why they're important, you get what you measure in the Navy, and I will tell you, I will sit here and tell you straight up that if you do not measure something, if you do not grade it, if you do not provide some sort of guidance and, sadly, I would say punishment for it, it's not going to get done. So, the only reason that people will do OPSEC training is because it's required. The only reason that people will, in some cases, will conduct a lot of things is because it's required. So you can't assume that people are going to naturally want to tag data correctly, that they're naturally going to want to, properly store data and make it searchable and that kind of stuff. So you need to integrate that into the Navy's warfighting efforts. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is make it a DRRS-N, make it part of DRRS-N. So you would add to one of the DRRS-N pillars the ability, or basically the command's ability to share data, to make data searchable, and what their kind of data storage and integration strategy is. I think this is actually a really good thing for a few reasons. One, you can get rid of the dependence on large share drives. So, for example, you can make a DRRS-N metric that says how often is the same data type repeated throughout somebody's shared drive. You can have a little scanner bot freaking scans, and that's pretty easy to determine. And I think what you'll find is that a lot of times we keep purchasing server space, but we never go back and clean up the share drive because nobody's been told that they have to do it, and they won't delete their crap. So having something like that, where a metric that's like, hey, the server tool went through and scanned and showed that you had replicated all these files. Basically, you had so many megabytes worth of duplicates, and you weren't getting rid of them, and would grade you accordingly. And that would force your server admins to actually go in and start to crunch down on things and make sure that what they're saving is different for a reason. You also want to have something like that can very easily scan for metadata. We keep talking about how we need to tag data. We need to tag data with metadata, which is going to make it easier to find. Well, if a data is not tagged and a certain percentage of it is not tagged, that should make you pop red in DRRS-N. And that should be a forcing function to tell your server admin to go in and start enforcing data tagging rules. If it's there and it's pops red in DRRS-N, it will get people's attention. So those are the kind of MOEs that I'm thinking about. Things that would be automatic, very similar to how for the personnel pillar, they automatically scan your EDVR and your ODCR, and if you don't fill so many critical billets or whatever, it's going to pop yellow or red. I'm thinking the same automatic kind of stuff that you don't have to rely on human beings for. You can simply use an automated tool to say, are you red, green, or yellow? And then you take human action from there. Second piece is, how do we break down like language, semantics, barriers, how things are tagged, etc. Like a lot of good things in the Navy, that would be an instruction. I really think that metadata needs its own instruction. I think that data storage for local commands needs an overarching guidance. And I think each command should have their own instruction for it, just like I think each command should have their own classification guidance. I realize to a certain extent that makes additional paperwork, but at the risk of sounding crass, I think a lot of times that we suffer from not enough management and not necessarily micromanagement. In this case, I think it makes sense for us to issue guidance, for the commanders to issue guidance on how they're going to store data. what is the proper way of doing it? And especially when you have 18 and 19-year-old sailors that are just willy-nilly, they're used to, you can just store data wherever, right? They're just used to this large cloud that they can just throw data into. Google gives them gigabytes upon gigabytes of space. That is not true when you go out to sea. When you go out to sea, there's only so many megabytes worth of space. You don't have this massive bandwidth. We don't have a fiber cable that gets towed behind an aircraft carrier. So you have to deal with scarcity. And if you don't have guidance for dealing with scarcity, you will have great disparity. And then you'll wonder why you can't get your mission done, because there are pieces that are not properly being scarce. So I think we need to have better guidance on that. I think there should be a local instruction, but I think it should link up to an overarching data instruction that is issued by 10th Fleet. So those are my thoughts for the action plan, and please let me know what you think in the comments.